EC2 Image Builder is a fully managed service to automate continuous builds of containers or virtual machine images. So here on the left-hand side, we have a representation of the image pipeline, which is what you need to create when you create Image Builder. And inside of this, we have to define particular components. The first is the image recipe or the container recipe. This is the base image and components and custom scripts to configure the image. So when we talk about the base image, we're saying something like the Docker base image. So think of like when you create a Docker file, you're saying pull from this base, like in the from command, or when we're talking about AMIs, we're using a base AMI. Components are these reusable modular code that you can define in YAML, and then you have your custom scripts or your Docker file. Depends on if you're building an image, a virtual machine image, or a container. You have your image workflow. This defines either the build or test steps written as a YAML file. I say build steps because it's on the build server, but it's build steps or test steps, okay? We have infrastructure config. This defines the underlying compute that will build the image. So what size of instance type are we going to use, whether it will be launched in a, which particular VPC and subnet and security group, things like that. We have the distribution settings. So this defines where to publish the outputted image. So whether it'll go to ECR or if it will go to a particular AMI in a particular region and account. You have a scheduler, so you define if when it will trigger on a schedule. So you have a cron expression, the schedule builder, which is just a simplified version of a cron expression, or manual. You could also trigger it via event bridge. I didn't write that in there, but you should know you can programmatically trigger it that way. You can manage the lifecycle of your images using EC2 Image Builder image lifecycle. So, you can say after a particular criteria that it should delete these images because you don't want accumulate too many images. EC2 Image Builder is free to use. The underlying compute to build the image and the images stored have their own cost, okay? An image workflow defines the sequence. Now we're talking about image workflow, the sequence of steps that the EC2 Image Builder performs during the build and test stages of the image creation process. So here's an example of that workflow, okay? And so if you notice on the left-hand side, I'm just gonna get the pen tool out here so we can look closer. Notice it says launch the build instance. It's waiting for the SSM agent. It's going to apply the build components. Then it's going to do inventory collection and then run a sanitized script. So, the default ones that come are really good. You don't really need to write your own, but if you have a more complex setup, you can absolutely do that. You have either a build stage or a test stage. This one is for specifically the build stage. This is build image up here, so the name indicates that it's for that there. The build stage makes changes to the EC2 build instance that's running your base image. And then the test stage runs the test suite on the EC2 build instance against your base image. So hopefully that makes sense there. We have infrastructure configuration. So this defines, the actual compute that will run the base image, such as the instance type, the instance profile and role, the VPC, subnets, security groups, logging, key pair for SSH, termination protection. It's supposed to say protection, not project. So we're talking about this over here. SNS topic for notifications. The default instance type, when not set, is an M5 large. And in the video, I was confused because I did the labs before I did the slides here because I wanted to make sure that I had the information accurate. But when EC2 Image Builder first came out, you couldn't change the instance type. All there was an M5 large. And so when I was using the service, I couldn't find an option to change it, not right away. But as I searched the docs and you see me do this, it wouldn't tell me where I could change it. But obviously you can change it, and I figured that out eventually. So understand that it runs an M5 large by default. And if you're worried about that, you need to change the infrastructure configuration, because I don't do this in the lab immediately. I do it in the second lab, in the container lab. So if you're worried about that cost of the M5 large, you can switch it down to something smaller, or you can just watch the video, okay? But yeah, you likely want to change that value. Let's talk about distribution settings. This is where it will, if we're talking about AMI in particular, it's where to output the AMI image, such as account and region, whether it has sharing permissions, licensing configuration, creating a launch template or a faster launch configuration, applying AMI tags on the image, which I see that is spelled wrong. I apologize for that. Then if it's for building out a container image, I don't know why I didn't write the word container image on here. container image, okay? This is where it will go in ECR. Apply container tags to the container image. Let's talk about components. So components allow us to create modular actions that will be performed during the build and verify or test or the test phase of our build. And so here are all the module actions that you have. I have a sneaking suspicion these are the exact same ones that SSM run command allows you to use, and this might be the exact same syntax as SSM run command. So I didn't check, but I just kind of remember doing that. And when you before EC2 Image Builder, the way you'd actually have to build images or containers is using SSM run commands and automating that. So I imagine that's what's happening here. But here's an example of downloading a file. We actually use this in the lab for the container one because we need to do that. So I didn't make a separate video on components. I just did it in the second containers. I just want to warn you about the labs that the second one where we do containers, we don't actually succeed completely in our goal to deploy the app. But we do a lot of debugging there, and I wanted to keep that video there, even though it was a failure, technical failure in the end. We do end up building a container, but not the one that I wanted to. But we do a lot of debugging, and I think that gets you really deep knowledge, and so I wanted to leave it in as is. So I just wanted to warn you there. But yeah, there you go.